Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar with Esther Mckay from Quest for Life Foundation. My name is Tracy Duncan and on behalf of Fearless, thank you so much for joining us tonight. While everyone is logging in and getting settled, and before I hand over to Alex and Esther, just some general housekeeping and announcements. As always in our webinars, we welcome any questions you may have during today's presentation. Please comment in the Q&A section and we hope to make time to answer these at the end of the session. Please also note this webinar will be recorded. We'll forward this link in the coming days and it will also be uploaded on the Fearless YouTube channel. Please feel free to share this with your networks. You can also stay connected with Fearless on our social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. It's on these channels we provide updates on our upcoming webinars and events. And speaking of upcoming events, our National Conversation on PTSD 2021 is coming up on the 24th and 25th of August. This will be an online event that will bring together the full spectrum of our community. That is, those who are impacted by, work with, or care for those living with PTSD. Early bird ticket sales for the National Conversation close in just over a week on the 30th of June. If you have not already checked out the amazing program, please visit our website after tonight's presentation. We have such a great lineup of speakers this year. So I think we're ready to roll now, Alex. So I'll hand over to you now to do your intro.
Thanks very much, Tracy, and welcome everyone to our first of what we expect to be 2 webinars before our next National Conversation. I'm very delighted to introduce Esther Mckay tonight to deliver the first of those webinars. Esther joined the New South Wales Police Force when she was 21. She had a 17-year career in the police force, mainly in the areas of forensics. When she left as a senior detective constable, wrote 2 excellent books, both of which I've read, around forensics and her experiences in that field. She's also been a very prominent advocate for mental health, particularly for first responders, and her passion for those in the police force, and also has worked in a variety of different areas to advocate for better support and services. She now works for Quest for Life, which is an organisation very dear to our hearts in Fearless, which does extraordinary work helping people to recover from their trauma and mental health issues. Very much looking forward tonight to Esther's presentation on immersive recovery orientated programs. She's a great speaker. I've heard her speak before, and without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Esther.
Thank you, Alex, and I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Fearless PTSD Australia and New Zealand for inviting me to do this webinar today. It's a real pleasure to be able to speak about something that I'm so passionate about. And one of the areas that I've found myself working in after all the years of being involved in this area of trauma is really focusing on the benefits of immersive recovery oriented programs. So I'm really happy to be able to talk a little bit more about that tonight, as well as what that involves and a little bit about the background of Quest for Life Foundation. So the Quest for Life Foundation was established in 1989 by Petrea King. Over 125,000 people have been through the centre since that time. So it's absolutely extraordinary how many people have actually been through our programs and have benefited from the work of Petrea and Quest for Life. So we'll just go to the next slide. The programs are quite varied. Petrea, the reason, just a little bit of background about Petrea and why she came to develop the Quest for Life Foundation. She had a diagnosis of leukemia when she was quite young, and the doctors basically said to her that it was terminal and you need to get your affairs in order. So she started to think about, well, is there anything I can do to change this diagnosis? So she started researching and she found that in fact there was. So for many years of researching and looking at other modalities and other ways of healing ourselves, was the beginning of what started her journey towards putting these programs together. So over the years, they've developed into quite a variety of programs. It's starting off with the Healing Your Life program, which was a general program for grief and loss, divorce, abuse, trauma. She calls it the Ds. So when you're going through a death, or there might be a divorce or a diagnosis, a disappointment, something in your life that has got you to a point where you just can't seem to put one foot in front of the other, and you really need some support to get yourself back into a healthy lifestyle. So that was the first sort of program that started to really start to get out there, and a lot more people were engaging in. There's a Quest for Life, which is a program for physical illnesses, so people that are suffering with any type of diagnosis in regards to physical health. Reclaiming Your Brain is more of a recent one, because more and more we're starting to learn that the brain is a big part of our overall health. It's not just a part of our body that sits alone. It's connected to all of the different parts of our body, so that we need to really look at how we can help ourselves to keep our brain health and age well. Chronic pain. A lot of people in society today, in our communities, are dealing with chronic pain, and there's lots of other things that you can do to assist yourself through that. Living with grief after suicide, which is a new one that we've sadly had to put together because of the amount of suicide that we have in our society, and the amount of people that are actually affected by a loved one or a friend, or someone in their circle who has actually died from suicide. It's a difficult one because people often don't like to talk about it, and these people that suffer with that have been left behind often don't get the care that they need. So we're really glad that we can put that one together, and we're starting to see people come through that. The Moving Beyond Trauma program is the one that I want to talk a bit more about today, and I'll move into that in a minute. But each year, the Quest for Life Foundation conducts at least 34 five-day programs. So we're rolling them around each month, week. Our programs are fairly almost back to back at the moment. So we don't have many weeks in the centre that we don't actually have programs running. And we do about 100 programs, which are 1 or 2 day workshops out in the community. So we get out into the rural areas. We've actually just been doing a lot of work with the bushfire recovery, and we've been going out into communities with facilitators, counsellors, massage therapists, and actually helping people in their regional areas to start to get some support around the trauma that they've been through. So I'll just go to the next slide. So the Moving Beyond Trauma program is the program that came about when, just a little bit of background myself, I had been running my police post-trauma support group for 10 years without a break. I had chronic PTSD with gradual onset, which had come about because of my forensic work. And I'd been to St John of God back in 2000, and they told me basically that you won't recover, you've just got to need to learn to live with this. And I was prescribed Ativan, which is like Valium, and I would take that when I was having panic attacks or anxiety attacks. I just wasn't thriving. I was living, but I wasn't really thriving in my life. And there was a lot of joy that I couldn't find. I was struggling to find meaning in my life. And I found myself in the fetal position on the floor after 10 years of sort of just, getting along with the tools and strategies that I'd learnt at St John of God and a little bit of counselling. So I found the Quest for Life Foundation because I didn't particularly want to go back into a medical facility, because I knew that would possibly involve medication, and I didn't want to go down the medication path, even though I was using Ativan on occasions to calm myself when I was feeling really anxious. So the picture that's there on the screen is the main room at the Quest for Life Foundation, and I walked into that room to do a 5-day program on the first evening that I arrived. There was 20 odd people in that program, because the Healing Your Life programs, we have up to around 20 people, although the Moving Beyond Trauma program, we have only about 15, because it's a much more intense program, so that we need to keep the numbers down to a lower degree. In the circle, they ask you, well, first of all, we do all the housekeeping and what have you, but they ask you, why are you here and what do you want to get out of your stay at Quest? And my response was, I wanted to learn how to breathe because I could not get any breath into my body, and I didn't want to die because I felt really I was having suicidal thoughts, but I wasn't actually going to act on it, but it kept coming up into my mind that basically my life wasn't worth living. So I wanted to learn some skills around how I could live a better, happier, healthier life. So we'll just go on to the next slide. And you can see by that picture of that room how safe the actual room is, and how as soon as you walk in there, it's so calming, and the staff there just really make you feel at home and welcome and supported from the minute you walk in the door. So when I attended the Moving Beyond Trauma program, I got talking to Patria about policing and about emergency services workers, and this was in 2014, and she said to me that she wanted to design a program specifically for people suffering with trauma, not only for police, veterans, emergency workers, doctors, nurses, but also for people in the community that are survivors of domestic violence or crime, or have been in terrorism, childhood sexual assault, childhood trauma. A lot of us have childhood trauma that we pack away and we never really go to and look at because it's something that we really don't know how to revisit. But as we get older, things start to sort of bubble up to the surface, and we find ourselves in a situation where we're really struggling. So I went to work at the Quest for Life Foundation after Patria invited me to come along and to help them to design the program. And it was based on the Healing Your Life program, which was the program that I had been to in 2014 that absolutely changed my life. At that program, I learned how to breathe because I didn't realise that my brain was connected to my body, and I'd actually numbed out my whole body. That fight, flight, freeze response that we have as part of the sympathetic nervous system meant that I was just numbing everything out, and I had actually had no idea how to feel anything. So it was the first time I actually started to feel my body, and I realised that there was a connection, which was interesting because in 2003, when I was writing my first book, Crime Scene, I was writing a chapter where 2 boys had been killed in a car accident, and I'd never really dealt with it, and it was extremely traumatic. And whilst I was writing the actual chapter, I started to feel my heart pounding and my breath. I just couldn't get the breath in properly. I was hyperventilating. And it was the first time that I realised that the body and the mind is actually connected, but I didn't really understand how it was connected. So when I actually got to Quest all those years later, I was starting to join the dots and starting to see that this trauma situation is not just in your mind, and it can't just be dealt with by trying to change the way that you think. It's a whole body system where we need to really look at all of those different areas to put a lot of ingredients together to help ourselves stay well. So we'll just go to the next slide. The Moving Beyond Trauma program has a mix of both emergency services and community members suffering from trauma, because we did a bit of work around deciding whether we thought it would be best just to have emergency workers or just to have community members in separate programs. But what we realised was trauma is trauma. And no matter how you've been affected, it still comes out in similar ways. The symptoms are similar, and people are dealing with similar issues in their life. So for emergency workers like police or fire or ambulance, to actually be in an immersive program with people that are in the community that have had, say, childhood trauma or sexual assault or have been involved in a motor vehicle collision, it actually normalises the response, that the body actually responds no matter what is the reason for the trauma. And we found that those that had dealt with it from their working environment to maybe other people that had dealt with it from an experience was helping each other to see the other side of the coin and how other people experience these different aspects of their everyday life. So in the Moving Beyond Trauma program, when people arrive at the centre, they're normally fairly nervous. We have a really great team that will help them in and make them feel really comfortable straight away. The Quest for Life Foundation is actually built on a double song line, so it's a place of healing. So as soon as you drive onto the premises, you actually feel that calmness and peace and serenity. I'm very blessed to go there every day, because when I drive in for work, it just calms me down as soon as I drive onto the property. Once all the paperwork and everyone's that's done and people have settled into their rooms, at 4 o'clock we do a short couple of hours sessions before we break for a really nutritious evening meal. So in those guidelines we have confidentiality, so obviously what's said in the room stays in the room. Attentive listening, so that when people are speaking, that you're not thinking about what your response is to that, because I think in life, when we're talking and we're interacting with people, if we're not listening 100%, we're actually thinking about what we want to say and what we're thinking. We're not actually listening to what the other person's saying. So it's a real skill to be able to 100% listen to someone else and not think about what you're going to say or how that's affecting you. So we ask people to really practice that skill. Not judging, and when we say not judging, not so much judging others, but judging ourselves. We tend to really be hard on ourselves, and that negative voice in our head is the highest judgment that we do in regards to, you know, that voice saying that you're not good enough, you're not worthy enough, or, you know, the things that you're saying or you're doing is not the best thing that you could have said or you could have done, or it could have been done better. So really not judging yourself and being kind to yourself. And looking at the life experience rather than theory. So just looking at the experience of what you've been through and what others have been through, and not a theory about why it might have happened or what could have been done to change it, or what could have been done better, that sort of thing. We go into a trauma education, which is explaining that you have a brain, but you are not your brain. So I think we go through life and sometimes we get into such a rush, and our lives are busy, and, you know, we're achieving and we've got children or we've got commitments or what have you. We forget that we can actually take control of our brain. Our brain doesn't have to control us. And when we start to get a lot of stuff happening, it gets really clouded, and things just can actually go a little bit off track when we're not having that control over the thought processes and how we're thinking and what we're doing with those thought processes and how we're responding to life as well, rather than reacting to things. A bit on sleep and nutrition. Sleep is such an important part of our everyday life. I think we underestimate how much we really need to get a good night's sleep, and that's uninterrupted and really getting down into that deeper sleep where we're able to get that really full rest and digest. Most of the people in society are not getting a good night's sleep. In fact, we've just done some webinar series on sleep that we're going to be publishing soon through Quest, just to help people to get a little bit more information around how they can help themselves sleep better. Of course, nutrition, looking at what good foods we can put into our bodies to support our systems. If we don't eat well, then our system and our body will not work well, and then the brain doesn't get the right food that it needs, and then we can't physically, you know, achieve what we want to achieve. So having movement in our life as well, exercise. It doesn't have to be going to the gym and pumping iron for an hour. It can just be some gentle movement. It can just be walking. It can be some yoga. It can be just some stretches. I mean, people have disabilities where they can't actually do physical exercise, so we can do stretches though, and there's a lot of things that we can do just to move the body, because we really do need to move. And once we're moving, that's getting the digestive system working, it's getting our immune system working, and it's all part of the whole complex systems of keeping ourselves well. A little bit of education about alcohol as well, and drugs, because with post-traumatic stress and trauma, alcohol is often used to numb our intrusive thoughts. And I know for myself, for many years I called myself a problematic drinker, because alcohol was my go-to. In the police force in the 80s and 90s, we were taught to drink. That was the way that we were taught to de-stress after a difficult job, or if we've been in a crisis situation, we get in the pub and have a few drinks. And on one side, it's great to do that social interaction because we need that. But on the other side, the alcohol is actually a depressant, and it makes it very difficult to deal with the thoughts and feelings that we have when we've been at a traumatic incident. when we're continually numbing it out and we're not actually sitting with it in a comfortable sense. We talk about mindfulness, meditation, and living in the present, because with trauma and the way that the automatic nervous system works, you have the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight, flight, freeze, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest, digest, and repair. These systems become a little bit off balance with trauma. And so the rest and digest and repair, unless we're in the present moment and we're bringing that online, we won't get that rest and repair that we need, which is vital for people that have got trauma and have issues with trying to keep all of that noise and that over responsiveness with our brain to a nice calmness. So we teach meditation all the way through the program, and we immerse the participants in a number of different types of meditation, because meditation doesn't always suit. One meditation might suit one type of person, might not suit someone else. So we always say, make it right for yourself. So if it's not right and you don't particularly feel comfortable with that meditation, try a different one. So we give them quite a few different types of meditation to sort of help them work out what's good and what feels good for them. Meditations to help you get to sleep, meditations that can calm you if you're about to go into a stressful situation. For instance, I did a meditation this afternoon before I'm doing this webinar, because it's really helped me to calm my brain, to focus, to be in the present, not thinking about what I'm going to be doing in half an hour's time, or what I'm going to be doing at the end of this presentation, or even the slide in front. I need to be present, and I need to be sitting right where I am at the moment. Bum on my seat, feet on the floor, present here, speaking and actually concentrating on what I'm trying to talk about now, rather than giving my brain mixed signals. So the big one that I found is really helpful, and I think a lot of people find that too when they come to our programs, is the moving from reaction to response. So especially in emergency service work, we're very reactive, and we have to be reactive because we've got to do what we have to do immediately when we're out on the road at a car accident, or we've been called to a domestic situation. We've got someone in crisis. We've got to, be there to resolve the situation. So we are reactive because we learn to be reactive in that role. But when we go home, we don't want to be reactive. We want to be responsive, and we want to be able to respond to our family needs and care for ourselves in a responsible way. So, when there's a loud noise at home and you get startled by that, being able to just respond and, not sort of go from 0 to 100 and fly off the handle and perhaps raise your voice, say something you didn't really want to say because you're reactive, but being more responsive and being in the moment and actually coming out with a response that will help get your message across, but also allow the person that you're speaking to, or the family member, or even the dog or the cat, to feel comfortable with you there in your presence. So the emotional regulation techniques as well, which incorporate breathing, deep abdominal breathing, which is what I wanted to learn when I went to my Healing Your Life program in 2014. And I couldn't get the breath anywhere further down from my chest, but now I've learnt tools and strategies on how to get the breath right down into my belly. And I do that to sleep, actually. I actually use that as a strategy to help myself drift off to sleep at night. So we do a lot of skills around teaching people how to get that breath in and calm themselves, and then using that to get themselves off to sleep. And if they should wake up during the night, using those skills to get yourself back off to sleep. Because there's nothing worse than being awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, thinking about all the things that you need to do tomorrow. And believe me, it is not helpful. So communication skills and strategies, like I said, about responding, and also having a language around responding. So being able to get your message across in a nice, calm manner so that people understand what you need, and being able to go into those difficult conversations that we all hate. We all hate conflict, but being able to deal with conflict in a calm manner so that you can actually get the resolution that you're hoping for, and not have a disruption or a distressing situation that achieves nothing. And then teaching them how to return home skillfully, because obviously when you get home, you're going to go back into your environment. So some of the things are going to be there that trigger you, and understanding what it is that's triggering you and how to respond to that rather than react. So if you were really reactionary when you were in the car driving, if it's a trigger for you, you might have been to car accident scenes in your working life, you might have been in a car accident, and something might trigger you when you're on the road, and you might have a situation where you've just flown off the handle. So understanding that you're starting to feel, you feel the feelings coming up, you can feel your heart rate increasing, you might feel a bit hot, you feel a bit sick in the stomach, and understanding what those feelings are, and then skillfully being able to respond to the situation, bring yourself down into a calm manner and being able to respond to that, and then get on with what you're doing. So if you're merging into a lane and someone's not letting you in the lane, being able to just, you know, pull back and merge in when you can, rather than, you know, I can't stand this situation and why me, and letting everything get completely out of control. So go on to the next slide. So Petrea's philosophy really does very much surround by the 4 C's. It's basically a recipe for healing, resilience and peace. So you can see by what I've already discussed, there's quite a few levels to what we learn when we're on these programs to implement them into our lives in all different situations, to help ourselves be much more healthier and happier, and also more present in our relationships, and also to be able to handle situations as well. I know when I went back to work in a structured environment, it had been nearly 15 years since I'd been in a structured environment, and I was really frightened of actually going into an environment where I had to be in the office from 9 till 5. I had to respond when I was required to, and I had to perform and, you know, make sure that I was on time with presentations, or get, you know, things that were required with my work commitments. And I wasn't really sure how I was going to handle all of that. But with all of these ingredients on board, I had all the skills to pull out all of the skills that I had anyway from policing and all the other things that I'd learned, but also how to handle situations with my post-traumatic stress not taking over. So we'll just go to the next slide, and I'll talk a little bit more about the 4 C's. So control over our response to life, which is very much something that we all want. We all want control, more control over things that we're dealing with, and control is something that we really do need a lot of strategy around. So being able to respond rather than reacting to things gives you a lot more control over your situation, and also your language to your partner, your family at home, your children even, because a lot of children of people that have trauma suffer secondary trauma. They can be vicariously traumatised by just seeing you very anxious and distressed, crying, not being able to cope. Some people just can't even get out of bed. And our kids actually do get affected by this. Both my children were affected by it, and both of them suffer from anxiety, which is very much more under control now. But when I didn't understand my own responses and my own reactions, my children were reactive as well, because I was reacting and they were reacting, and we didn't have the right language to be able to talk calmly and in a loving way to each other, which once I learnt these skills, it's all very basic, but you just start dealing with things the way that you deal with them, and it works until it doesn't work anymore. And that's when you realise that there's so many better ways that we can actually do, you know, working with our families and our work situations and our interrelationships with people. So commitment to living, really committing to looking after yourself and caring for yourself. So, you know, as I was talking about nourishment, nutrition, exercise, sleep, really committing to making sure that you're caring for yourself and you're putting yourself first, because we often don't. We often neglect ourselves, and then we can't be the best version of ourselves unless we look after ourselves first, so that we can then look after our children, our parents if they're elderly, you know, our friends who are going through difficult times in their life. We really can't be there for others if we're not there for ourselves. Looking at a sense of challenge, so those challenges that come into our lives, being able to deal with those challenges with a much better understanding of where we sit, and looking at ways in which we share ourselves with the right people as well, so that we put ourselves into good relationships. We find like-minded people that we form friendships with. We find groups that we have interests that are in common. That's why, you know, it's really great if people have interests that are, say, for instance, if they're interested in art or they're interested in horse riding, that they make sure that they join those type of groups and surround themselves with people that have a common interest to help them to really get joy in their life and, you know, sort of find connected and like-minded people. And that sense of the connection, to really be connected with people and not be isolated. And I think we can all agree that isolation is a big part of trauma. We do tend to isolate ourselves when we're not feeling very strong, or we're anxious, or we're feeling panicky, or we're depressed. The easiest thing to do is just to isolate and stay away from everybody. And it's actually the worst thing we can do, because we just get worse when we're isolated, and we don't nurture ourselves, we don't care for ourselves, and we need to be connected with other people. We also need to be connected with our spirit, whether that be your spirituality. It could be a religious group that you like to be attached to. It could be just an inner spirituality. It could just be a sense of the world. It doesn't have to be anything in particular, but it's just some form of making sense of the world and why we're in it. So that connection is really important. We'll just go to the next slide. So healing from post-traumatic stress is possible. And I think this is where we've learnt so much over the years. Going back in the early 2000s, when I was first diagnosed with PTSD, I was told that I would only get to a certain level of recovery, and then it would be a matter of me learning to live with it, which is what I did for 10 years or so, until I found myself in the fetal position on the floor, because I became completely overwhelmed and I just couldn't see through the symptoms of the trauma and the things that were triggering me and the nightmares. And I wasn't looking after my nutrition, I wasn't sleeping well, my relationships were falling down, things were just not working anymore. And I think that's what I said before, that we use our strategies until they don't work anymore, and this is where there is so much more we can do to help ourselves to live a much healthier and happy life. So putting ourselves in a safe environment, and that's what we provide at Quest when people come to see us. It is 100% a safe environment where they're nurtured, cared for. We have a very high ratio of staff to participant levels. So there's usually around 7 staff to 15 participants, which means that participants are cared for no matter whether they just need a hot pack because they've got a back pain or a pain in their shoulder or something like that, because the body being connected to the mind is something that we neglect to look at in regards to nurturing our bodies. If we don't nurture them, well, then the trauma will come out in some other way. Musculoskeletal issues, you hear a lot of people having neck and shoulder problems, back problems with trauma, because the trauma sits in the muscles. And so coming to a centre like Quest means that you get that care for those symptoms that you've probably been ignoring, and that it's actually time to start identifying what they are and listening to your body. Love, support, nurturing, as I said, there are people to sit with you that are trained, that can actually help you through all levels of dealing and delving into the trauma in that safe environment. Beautiful, nutritious, healthy, organic food. The food is absolutely amazing, and I'm very blessed to be able to have hot meals, breakfast and lunch when I go to work every day if we're in program, because it's available to the staff, which is part of that beautiful nurturing way that Quest looks after us all as staff members there. So the week that you're there, you really will change the way that you look at your sourcing of your food. Slow cooking is so good for you. It holds all the nutrients in. Sourcing local organic food, seasonal food. We should really look at the seasonal food. And if you have a look on the internet, you can actually look at what sorts of foods and fruits and vegetables are actually in season for each time of the year. And then if you go to the supermarket and you have a look at the ones that aren't in season, you'll see that they're not overly fresh. A lot of foods are put in storage and frozen and cool roomed, and you're best to have fresh, organic, low seasonal food if you possibly can. And a lot of places have local markets. I have a local market here in Camden. I go to most Saturdays and I get all my fresh produce there. So start sourcing out some beautiful local food that you can find locally. Stay in good company. As I mentioned before, you know, always staying in good company is something that helps you to keep yourself replenished. Sleep, exercise, nourish the body, nourish the brain. Education in skills and strategies of understanding your emotions and understanding how that makes you feel, and also identifying when you're being triggered so that you can actually feel what that's doing in your body, and instead of letting yourself go into a full-blown reaction, calming yourself before you start to have that reaction. Years ago, I still have nightmares on occasion now, but years ago I was having a lot of nightmares one after the other, and I would have a terrible day the next day because I really couldn't sit with it. I didn't understand how it was sitting in my body, and now I understand how it feels, what the feeling is. I sit with it, I give my time to feel it, and then I get on with my day. The other thing I was going to say about the medication that I was taking, I don't take that anymore because I use meditation when I am triggered by something and I'm starting to feel that, you know, that I'm starting to build up into a reaction. I just do a meditation, and rather than needing a tablet to calm myself down. I also found with the medication that was starting to make my heart pound, and this is another issue with medications, which are great at certain times when you need them, but long-term use, if you are on medication, you really should go back to your doctor at intervals of every year or two and have your medication reassessed, because medication can start to have synergistic effects with other parts of your body. And with myself, it was starting to it was heightening my blood pressure, and I was getting my heart pounding as a side effect from it. So this can actually be quite dangerous. So you need to be on top of that as well. So that's, yeah, emotional regulation and your communication skills, as I've mentioned before. So I'll just go to the next slide. So how do you get to go to a Moving Beyond Trauma program? We have some lovely staff in our bookings area, Candace, Helen and Wendy. You can give them a call at any time. If you are with the NDIS, if you have an NDIS program, you can actually use that to go as part of your NDIS services. If you are with DBA, eligible veterans can come along. Insurers in New South Wales, EML, Allianz are providers. Victims of crime can use some of the fees that they get through their crime subsidies. We also have a number of confidential subsidies. Quest never like to send anyone away or turn anyone away. So if you don't have enough funds to come to a program, we will do everything in our power to find the funds. One of the ways that we do fund is through the Police Post-Trauma Support Group, which is a charity that I've been running since 2005. We have subsidies for police and their families. So that is one way of getting a subsidy if you're in the police force or you were in the police. The police cadets also give subsidies, and the Quest for Life will fund also subsidies for you if you're not a member of an emergency services, or there are subsidies for people that have been victims of domestic violence. We had some subsidies come through for the bushfires. There's all sorts of different ways of getting on programs. It's just a matter of calling up and having a chat to the bookings team, and they'll explain to you how you can make that possible. So you just go to the next slide. So the near future, I was at Quest in 2016 and 17 when I helped develop Moving Beyond Trauma program, and I coordinated those programs. I actually lived on about 10 or 11 of those programs, and I coordinated the team until I left to go and work at the Police Legacy Backup for Life project, which was a tough call because I didn't want to leave Quest. I absolutely was immersed in working there and absolutely loved the philosophy there. However, there was just some unfinished business that I felt that I needed to develop a project for police and transitioning police, which I was away working there for 4 years. I've just recently come back to Quest in my role as Program Development Manager to specifically assist with the development of our new 4-week immersive living program. So it's a longer immersive program because what we're finding is that people that come to the 5-day Moving Beyond Trauma or Healing Your Trauma program, trauma program, that have trauma need a longer immersive stay, and we really would like to develop that longer immersive stay to accommodate those people that would benefit from staying on at the centre longer, so that we can also provide more skills and strategies for them as well. So the Healing Trauma program will enable them to heal brain and body as well. When participants arrive, they'll be assigned with a mentor. So if anyone is looking at doing the 4-week program, they will have already have done a 1-week program so that we can assess them, and then we can transition them across into the 4-week program. The participants will be assigned to a mentor, so they'll have someone that will mentor them through that 4 weeks. And the 4 weeks will incorporate animal therapy, yoga, art therapy, education in exercise, of course, immersing in meditation, our beautiful organic food. They will also learn life skills, so to get them back into routines. A lot of people, especially if they're living alone, are losing their routines of getting themselves back into community. So helping them preparing meals, just, working in our garden. We'll have an organic vegetable garden there, so working there. There'll be out placements so that people will be doing community engagement to get them used to being back out in community. Career transition. This is something that I'm really excited about. We will be assisting those people to get their resumes done, prepare themselves for career transition if that's what they want to do. Some people will just want to be looking at maybe doing a bit of voluntary work or just getting themselves into some sort of group that gives them joy in life. They might not necessarily want to go to work, but for those that do want to go to work, we'll be assisting them to be prepared so that when they do finish that 4 weeks, they've got some ideas about what their transferable skills are, what types of roles there are out there that they're suitable for, and assistance with actually applying and navigating the online job platforms, having their network, their LinkedIn network all up and running, and being ready to go so that they can actually go back to work successfully. And whether that even means going back to the job that they had or that they have when they go into the 4-week program, because we will have police and emergency workers that come through that are still working with their particular department that are looking at going back to work. So we're really excited to see how we can assist people to stay in the jobs that they love rather than losing those roles and moving on to something else. We will bring partners or loved ones into the program in the last week so that there will be a transition there, that the language can be shared so that they understand what their loved one has learned in the program, how they can assist them, how they can work together on better strategies post-program, and integrating themselves back into community and getting back into that healthy lifestyle. So the aftercare will also be something that is intrinsic in the program that we're running, because people really do need that support. They need that follow-up. So we will be following up participants to make sure that they're still thriving and assisting them if they need to top up with anything once they've gone home. So let's go to the next slide. And in regards to the centre that we're building, we're very excited to get started with that. We're just going through council now. We've got approval and we're just waiting for building certificates. So we will have 24 beds in 3 lodges and a purpose-built community centre there where we'll be running all of the parts of the program. We'll have counselling rooms, massage rooms. We're putting in a heated pool. There'll be a music room, a gym. The centre's going to be really well equipped to cover all aspects of the Healing Trauma program. So I hope that's given you a fairly good overview of what we're doing at the Quest for Life Foundation. And I'll hand over back to Alex to have a chat to you in case there's any questions.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Esther. That was great. And can I just say a couple of things in response to your presentation? First of all, I've been to the facilities of Quest for Life, and they are amazing. And the thing that struck me the most about going there is that aspect that you spoke about in terms of peace. It is such a peaceful setting. I think anyone who goes there is immediately struck by that. And that, I think, sets people up for a fantastic week because it is, Bundanoon's a beautiful place and in itself, and the place just exudes that feeling of peace. The other thing I'll say, Esther, is that as you probably know, I've just finished writing a book about my own experiences, and you could have written that book. It's amazing how similar our stories are, but I think there's a lesson in that as well, is that although everyone who suffers from PTSD has got their own story, it's amazing how there are consistent similarities between people's stories. And that was one of the things that really struck me with yours, is that, and particularly the issue around nightmares. I had my own nightmares at a certain stage of my life, and exactly what you said, they could be so debilitating in terms of how you then approach the rest of your day or the rest of your week. So thank you for that, and thank you for being so open about your own situation. And I encourage people to look at the Quest for Life program should you feel that you need some redirection in your life. I've got one question here from Grant, Esther. He says, hi Esther, I'm curious about I can never pronounce this word, so please forgive me, the comorbidity of trauma and inflammation. I suffer complex PTSD and regularly have severe bouts of inflammation that flatten me for days through aches, pains, brain fog, fatigue, suicidal ideations, etc., which is hugely debilitating. Keen to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And of course, the comorbidity is something that is a real issue. And the trauma, when it sits in your body, it's got to come out somewhere. So this is why we see the biomarkers for trauma in hypertension, we see autoimmune disease, we see inflammation, the things that you've just suggested. And this is why it's so important that we look after our body. This is, good nutrition, meditation. I mean, meditation is very, very helpful for renewing our cells and making sure that we allow ourselves that time to rest and digest. The 12-hour digesting, give your body 12 hours to digest. So each night, sleeping whilst you're sleeping and not eating from, say, 8 o'clock at night to 8 o'clock in the morning, that 12 hours gives you time for cell renewal. So learning all those strategies, the mindfulness, the exercise, watching your weight, making sure that you're giving yourself nutritious food, being careful about what medications that you are taking, alcohol. Of course, alcohol and drugs, the alcohol causes inflammation. So this is where you see the arthritic issues coming through, the aches and the pains. So it really is a holistic approach, and that's why immersing yourself in a residential program is so good, because in that 5 days, you get time to actually identify what those particular issues are that you're dealing with, and getting the support and assistance around how you can support yourself to help yourself to be a lot more healthier than you may have perhaps been in the past.
Fantastic. Thanks, Esther. And I hope that answers Grant's question. I have another one here asking whether you have specific programs available for young adults, say 14 years and upwards.
At the moment, we don't. It's been on the agenda for quite some time, and Patria has had a lot of discussion around developing programs for young adults. It's something that is possible in the future. We do a lot of outreach in the regional areas on our one-day programs, which are often free. But if you keep an eye on the website for the Quest website for our programs and our outreach, children from the ages of 16 and above can often attend those holistic health and wellbeing programs, and I suggest that they do. My son did one of those when we were running it through Police Legacy, and it was extremely helpful for him.
Yep.
And I would really like to see some adolescent programs being developed, so I will definitely keep that in mind for more discussions with Petrea about that.
Yeah, fantastic. And I one of the things I'm passionate about too, and I know that there are different organisations who deal with this, but children or relatives or family and friends of people who suffer from PTSD also go through their own trials and tribulations, and it can have an enormous impact on their lives as well. And and I think it's just a real good reminder to people that if you are close to someone who's a PTSD sufferer, you need to look after yourself as well, and you need to take the time out to seek support as well, should you need so. I'm also curious, Esther. I mean, being an ex-member of the police force and dealing a lot in your programs with in your previous work with police members, and also as you said, you'll see veterans come to your programs as well. To me, it's always been an issue around how they individually cope with PTSD, and there's a lot of external factors around. If I admit to having a problem, does that impact on my career? Does that impact on my reputation? Does that impact on my relationships? I'm just really keen to get your views about that issue, what you're seeing at the moment through the programs at Quest for Life, and perhaps some of the other work that you've been doing as well.
I think the stigma is still alive and well. We're still struggling with the stigma. I hear often, especially in people that are in our programs, that some of them don't even want anyone to know that they're there, because the stigma is there around the diagnosis of PTSD or having some sort of trauma issue. So we've really got to normalise it, because as I was talking earlier, the fight, flight, freeze response is a normal, natural response. And when you're in that constantly day after day after day, your body is going to respond to that. And so it's a matter of normalising it. But we need to train and educate managers, because in policing or any military style organisation, looking after our own is not really a priority in the education area. So a manager may not have education on how to deal with someone that's suffering from trauma. So in a way, they can't really help or assist people if they don't have the right training themselves. So it's an area where we're really lacking, and we need to get better education into, I believe, right from the beginning of when people are younger going into these types of vocations, to understand their body and understand how they're going to deal with the exposures and what they can do to help themselves, but also to normalise it so that when they are feeling that they're not coping, that they can go and ask for their help and not feel it's going to impact on their career, because it still is impacting on people's career. There's no two way about it. The military seem to be doing it a little bit better. They've got some more strategies coming into play, but a lot of our police agencies are very much lagging behind, and they're not getting the education in early enough, and they're also not supporting their managers around how they can support their teams.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and look, I agree with you 100%, and I see that myself through the work through Fearless. That stigma is still there. I do believe it's getting better, but I still talk to people who are in the military who are concerned about coming forward. So what I think is it's a good opportunity, I think, for those people in particular to be able to go into a safe environment like Quest for Life and talk those things out, because I do think that it's a very important issue, for both men and women, but I've found in particular it's been a very important, it's a very crucial issue for men in particular. So thanks for that. I've got another one here. I'll just bear with me. Yeah, sorry, no, it was just an all-round saying thank you, Esther, for sharing your insights and stories. I did get a question through text, bizarrely, but he just wanted to know more about the nutrition side and about how do you balance that out with talking to professional people around diet, etc. Because his view was that he thinks he knows what's good for himself and what keeps him, but he doesn't know, should he be getting more medical advice around what's good and what's not?
Look, I think that's a really good point, because people become very confused with so many different diets, and, you know, one minute it's they're saying that some types of foods are healthy, and the next minute they're saying they're not, and oils are changing and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it is good to keep on top of the latest discoveries in what they're finding in regards to nutrition. But I think also you can just keep it fairly basic, because, as I said, the slow cooked foods is where the nutrition is being held. So if you're cooking in a slow cooker, or you're cooking in your oven, turn it down and cook it for longer. It's really simple. You can cook a leg of lamb for 3 or 4 hours on a very low setting, and it's absolutely just falls apart. And you can really taste the nutrition in it. But if you cook it fast and within an hour on a higher temperature, you'll see the difference. Yeah. So I think just the slow cooking, and slow cookers are great for putting in all sorts of different vegetables. You can just put in whatever's available. And buying organic is important. I think in Australia we're fairly lucky that we don't have an over use of pesticides and what have you, but they still do use them. So I still say that organic's best. It is more expensive, but if you can source it at your local markets, well then, even better still. And you'll see that a lot of organic foods are really fresh. You can sort of, when you start looking at the vegetables and the fruits, you can actually see it for yourself. I think it's just a bit of really using your common sense and being more very, very basic about it. Like I said, the slow cooking seasonal, being very careful not to have processed foods or too many processed foods, foods with trans fats in them, foods with MSG, food colorings, that sort of thing. Steer away from all of that. They can be quite inflammatory. Just, when you go to the supermarket, if you go around the outside of the aisles, that's where all the good nutritious foods are. If you go on the inside, you'll see all the added ons, the chips and all the flavourings.
The comfort food,
Exactly. And you can cook, you can make your own, when you're doing a slow cook or a stir fry, you can actually make your own sauce. You don't need to buy a ready-made one, because they're the ones that often have preservatives in it. A can of organic tomatoes and some oregano and some basil and other types, a bit of curry powder or whatever, you can make your own flavours. So, I think it's just a matter of you can be fairly basic with it, but also not overeating, looking at the portions, and giving your digestive system time to digest. I really do believe in that 12-hour digestion window. It really
no, definitely. I do too. And as you said, it's finding the balance for yourself as well. I think that's the most important thing. What works for you, and and different people have different things that they do. That's unfortunately we that hour went very quickly, Esther, and we've come to the end. So look, I want to say once again thank you to you and to Quest of Life and Patria and all the fantastic work that you do. It's always a pleasure to have you talk to us because we really respect everything that you've achieved in your life and the work that you're doing now. So thank you. Just a reminder to the people that this will, as Tracy said, this will be made available for people to watch afterwards. I also want to just to reiterate our national conversation that's going to take place on the 24th and 25th. It is going to be a great program that we've got. Just a reminder that Early Bird is coming to a close at the end of June. The last thing I'll say is please be careful out there. We for particularly those of you who live in the Sydney region, understand that we've had more cases today of COVID. Stay safe. Protect yourselves and your family. We hope to see you again at our next webinar. That most likely will be our chair, Chris Barry, who will talk about a number of issues leading up to our next national conversation. So once again, thank you for everyone for attending. Thank you for Tracy for organising. And most importantly, thank you, Esther, for a fantastic presentation. Good night, everyone, and all the best.
Thanks.
Thanks, Esther.
Thank you.